My name is Jillian Burke, and I'm going to be giving a brief discussion on the administration of my informal reading inventory, as well as the intervention program that I was able to form based on my results from the informal reading inventory. First, I'm going to give a brief background of my student, as I did in my papers. My student is in the second grade, and he is in a self-contained classroom. He's been in a self-contained classroom since kindergarten, and he is currently reading below grade level. His classification is speech and language impairment. He does receive services in school. He receives physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy as well. When I first administered the IRI, I thought it was interesting the difference between what the school I was working in, their benchmarking system, which was Fontes and Pinnell, as compared to the Pearson version that we used for this course. I'd just like to show an example of that. So as you can see here, this is the primer version that I used on my student when administering the IRI. He was able to read these words very accurately. I then moved on to the first B level, which he also did reasonably well with. But when looking at the Fontes and Pinnell, it's interesting. This is actually a level B list. So just comparing these words to one another is vastly different, as you can see. It was also the same with the oral and silent reading passages I found. Here is Fontes and Pinnell's version. This is actually level B, and you can see the text obviously is very different. My little dog likes to sleep with me. Very repetitive. There are also visualizations and illustrations that go with this to help the student, as opposed to the version we used, which was just straight text and a bit more difficult for the student to read, as opposed to the Fontes and Pinnell. So my student was actually functioning at a level D or so in Fontes and Pinnell, and we actually had to stop at the level A. Two of the activities that I found to be effective when implementing my intervention program were story mapping, as well as making sequencing flowcharts in order to see what was going on in the story, to understand what the student was taking away from the story. And for sequencing, it really helped develop not only the main idea, but also those summarizing and retelling skills that are necessary for comprehending. Another activity I worked on with my student was making text-to-self connections. So in an instance such as this one, we read Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. And then I asked my student if he could draw a picture of a time in which he had a very bad day. So as you can see, he drew a picture of him dropping a bowl of cereal, and his mom was very angry with him. So in turn, he felt he had a bad day, which allowed him to relate to the character and ultimately understand the story better. We would also focus on text-to-text connections, such as nursery rhymes as Jack and Jill and Jack Be Nimble. I would ask the student questions such as, have we read a nursery rhyme that reminds you of Jack Be Nimble before? Vocabulary development is also very important when it comes to comprehension, so we would go over words before reading, such as nimble, at length, in order to increase the student's comprehension. So one of the main ways that I assessed my student was through informal observations. I felt that this was the best way because it alleviated some of that pressure that I think the student felt during the informal reading inventory. So I kept a small notebook with me whenever working with a student, and I would take notes in a similar fashion to what was used in our text. So I would have the focus skill on this day was fluency, and then I would take notes regarding that. This focus skill, we worked on main idea, and I would kind of just jot down what I could improve on and maybe focus on next time. Focus skill summarizing, and so on. So I really think this helped me guide my instruction and my intervention program for this student. Ultimately, I was able to learn a lot from implementing this intervention program, and I learned a lot from this course in general in terms of strategies and skills that I can use, in particular for comprehension, since that is what I mainly focused on with my target student.